As we know, student loan debt continues to be a huge problem. We have $1.5 trillion in outstanding student loan debt. This is debt that students cannot get rid of, even if they file for bankruptcy. And so what is the Trump administration doing to solve this problem, maybe alleviate some of this financial stress? They're doubling down and proposing things that would actually make it worse. The Trump administration, including Education Secretary Betsy DeVos, announced that they want Congress to cap the amounts that students and families can borrow for post-secondary schooling. So this only pertains to federal student loans. And so they're saying, maybe we should just limit the amount of money that they can borrow, and then we can solve this. But it doesn't solve the problem. First of all, we still have $1.5 trillion in outstanding student loan debt. And more importantly, if you limit access to these loans, what does it mean? Then they're gonna have to take out loans where? At banks, at private institutions, which of course offer much higher interest rates. So it's much more expensive to borrow in that regard. So education is unaffordable. That is the problem here. And so what can we do to solve that? Trump doesn't care. Of course, Betsy DeVos doesn't care. All they really care about is limiting what the federal government does in terms of giving out loans to these students.
So Betsy DeVos, I'm not saying no white people's names right today. In honor, today is AOC Day for me. So Betsy DeVos. You know what? When you just read the story and you're like, Donald Trump or Drumpf got together with Betsy and they had a meeting of the minds, which you are like, here we go. You know what I mean? But in light of what just happened with these celebrity, wealthy, privileged people buying their ways into college, already taking up the spots of people who probably could have earned them earnestly. Now you're also gonna limit the amount of resources and funds to those people, like people who actually have to work twice as hard just to be seen. And now you wanna take the opportunity for them to get the lowest interest rate loans that they can get to ensure that they will be in debt and continue to create the gap with the haves and the have-nots, which is what's being constantly pushed from this administration, that so many of you who are not wealthy, who cannot identify with privilege, promote because of your own fears and your own racism. And you're biting your nose to spite your face, because you are the ones that are gonna suffer the consequences the most, because everything that they're targeting down.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, Trump, of course, won because of some of his divisive rhetoric, but he also won because he pretended to care about the economic frustrations and stress that many Americans are feeling. Many Americans who are living in the middle of the country who feel like they had been neglected or forgotten. And so while I think that race certainly has a lot to do with what's going on, socioeconomic status is really the heart of the issue, right? Because there's plenty of poor white people in the middle of the country who will be negatively impacted by this.
Absolutely.
And a lot of them did vote for Trump, thinking that he would look out for them. And unfortunately, because of the failures of our media, they still think Trump is looking out for them. But the fact of the matter is, he's making it increasingly difficult for you to just get a fair shake, a fair opportunity. No one's asking for handouts here. What we're asking for is an opportunity for people to lift themselves out of poverty. And instead, he's creating a system and he's exacerbating a system that is pushing people into poverty.
But you know what? I agree with what you're saying, Anna, but I don't give those people a pass because the mainstream media is not giving them the information. It is your responsibility and your job as an American, since you're always telling everybody else what their responsibility as an American is, to be informed about your ecosystem, what's going on in your world, your habitat. Of course you need to know what's going on. And how many more of these things does Trump have to do before those people realize, oh, this is not in our best interest. The battle with the car people, right? With the jobs going abroad, but that were not beneficial to America in any way, but that the bill of goods that was sold to them. It's like Pinocchio and the wooden nickel. At what point do you become accountable for your life and in the world that you live in? At what point do you say, hey, you know what? This was wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong, and this is not benefiting me at all. How many more passes do they need?
I just can't believe this story is, the price of higher education has skyrocketed. So we're gonna solve that by taking away your loans.
Yes.
That's like, I have this really bad itch. I'm gonna take away your itch cream.
Right.
Okay, well, I'm still itchy.
Yeah.
I'm still kind
There's
of itchy.
no
That has not
conversation.
solved the problem at all.
Not to mention they're marketing themselves to your kids. I'm sorry, because I went through this with my kids when they went to college. The schools, they send you the emails, and it's a brand now. It's not just a college. It's not a place for post-secondary education. It's a brand.
It is, and I want to get to that in a second, but Trump and Betsy DeVos are not done yet, because if you thought that was bad enough, they actually have more in this proposal that is disastrous. So they argue, no, it's okay. We're limiting access to these federal loans that have lower interest rates, but we are expanding Pell Grants, which on the surface, that sounds exciting, that sounds good. Pell Grants are grants, you don't have to pay them back. But they're not adding additional funding to Pell Grants. They're actually doing the opposite. So the administration's policy proposal calls for expanding the Pell Grant system, for example, but not by restoring funding that's been cut from the program. Instead, the White House signaled a desire to grant wider access to Pell money for educational providers. You wanna know what that means? That means that Betsy DeVos is trying to get Pell Grants given to for-profit colleges and the very institutions that have defrauded students and have put them in a tremendous amount of debt for unaccredited degrees or whatever, degrees that mean nothing. And so if you look at the education department and what's happened to it since Betsy DeVos was in charge, she's brought in all sorts of for-profit college executives, all of her for-profit college cronies. These are the very people who have given a green light to fraudulent recruiting techniques where they would lie to potential students about what their job placement rates were. My favorite example is when recruiters would argue that, hey, you should come to our school. I know you're gonna take out all these loans, but you're gonna become a chef. And if you look at our numbers, 95% of our graduates become chefs. But you wanna know what they considered chefs in those numbers? People who worked at fast food restaurants.
Yep.
So that gives you an idea of how deceptive they were, and they were so terrible that many of these schools had to shut down under the Obama administration. But when Betsy DeVos came in, these are her friends. She loves this for-profit model. And so she loosened the restrictions and the regulations, and now they're gonna expand the Pell Grants to these schools so they can just pocket the money and give pretty much nothing back to these students.
Wow.
It's disgusting, and that takes the money away from individuals who want to go to legitimate institutions.
It's like a race to the bottom, because
So bad.
that's the short-sightedness about these institutions, is that if you let in only the richest students who are not deserving, but whose parents can afford to pay for you to go there, Yale is no longer gonna be Yale. Yale is gonna be DeVry.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, it's when I found out that George W. Bush went to Yale and that Trump went to Wharton, I was like,
But all of these, I mean, look, that story that broke recently, it was jarring, but not really. I mean, they didn't go about it the traditional way, because you can buy your way or you can buy your child's way into any school you'd like, right? But you just buy a building, you get a building named after your family, and then your kid's good. It's easy sailing after that. They just went through it in a really dumb way and they got caught. But yeah, I mean, you think George W. Bush got into, a good school based on merit? You think Trump got into good schools based on merit? Homeboy won't even release his transcripts. I mean, he threatened those
From
schools.
high school.
From high school, exactly. I mean, we know he's an idiot. We see it every day. But we're taking opportunities away from people. And so every time I hear someone on the right wing talk about lifting yourself or pulling yourself up by the bootstraps, what bootstraps? As J.R. Jackson once, infamously said, We ain't got no boots, we ain't got no straps.
Like what you see? Click the subscribe button below and don't forget to ring the bell to never miss another video from the Young Turks.